Big Noon Saturday sucks, but more than that, Fox is doing a disservice to the fans and the very product that they are trying to provide. So let's talk about some of the core issues with Fox and their Big Noon nonsense. We'll start by breaking down whatever this corporate vomit was that Joel Klatt was spewing recently on Twitter. Starting at the top with quote, Big Noon Saturday has been the most watched college football window for the last few years. Last year, our window averaged almost 7 million viewers per game, end quote. Now look, of course people are going to watch the biggest Big Ten game of the weekend, which will likely feature one of the big three brands that's not on the West Coast. It does not matter whether Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State plays, their fans are going to find a way to watch it. Hell, they could put Michigan versus Ohio State on Tubi at 8 o'clock in the morning and over 10 million people will still find a way to watch it. The problem is, Fox wanted the noon time slot because they hate competition and they didn't want to compete with ESPN and the SEC. So instead, they've run away to their own time slot and now try to pretend that they are geniuses who created some kind of magical ratings behemoth. Nothing Fox is doing is revolutionary. They just take whatever big brand is available, throw them at noon, slap the Big Noon sticker on it, and pretend that the game is now more important than it actually is. And then the suits over at Fox pretend that they've magically done something important. Next up, we have his dumb point that before Big Noon came around, this window was basically non-existent, which was for good reason, because the fans and the people who actually cared about the sport realized long ago during the golden age of cable that the noon time slot diminished the very product that they were trying to sell. It's not rocket science. The schools and networks all realized the primetime and 3:30 time slot provided a better atmosphere for the games and allowed them to build those games up through the early parts of the day. Why do you think Michigan installed lights at the Big House back in 2010? Spoiler alert, it's because they knew they were missing out on the nighttime atmospheres that had swept across college football. The fact that the schools and conference were dumb enough to sign off on this makes a lot of us question what the actual goal is, because more and more it all feels like one big money grab at the expense of the fans. Just look at Big Noon's extra long TV timeouts, which ruin the flow of their games, and it's really noticeable when you watch it side by side with other networks. He then goes on to explain how all the networks have time slots that they are contractually obligated to, and instead of being adults and solving the problem, they would rather act like children and pretend nothing can be done to solve the issues that fans and the schools are having. Remember, Fox could have negotiated for a flex. They could have negotiated for the ability to put games on at noon, 3:30, or 7:30, depending on the type of matchup. But instead, they were fixated on just having the noon time slot, and that's why we end up where we are now. We all know about them ruining the Penn State whiteout, which used to go to their toughest opponent of the season, and now it's been relegated to their third or fourth toughest opponent, and this year it was even put on Peacock, who by the way, continued to show that they have no business being a part of this deal in any way. Beyond that, because of Big Noon, Ohio State had just one primetime home game all season, and it was against Western fucking Michigan. If that wasn't bad enough, the Buckeyes' final 6 games of the regular season are all noon kickoffs, with 5 of those being Fox Big Noon Saturday games. They might as well just rename it the Buckeyes Football Network at this point, cause that's who's propping up their ratings. And Ohio State fans hate it too. We've all heard their fans complaining about Big Noon ruining their game day experience, and that's not even getting into the issues that it's causing with recruiting. And again, it all comes back to Fox being afraid of competing with ESPN and the SEC. But at the end of the day, Fox only cares about money, even if it comes at the expense of the very product they are selling. That's their biggest problem. Big Noon only exists because the suits at Fox wanted the highest ratings possible to make the most money at the expense of the fans, the schools, and the conference. When they don't have a big matchup like 2 of the 3 big brands going at it, they'll just throw one of those brands at noon against whatever C-tier school they're playing, and those massive fan bases will then prop up the ratings while Fox pretends they created some kind of magical gimmick that makes whatever game they put at noon seem more valuable. But as we already discussed, those massive fan bases have insanely passionate fans who will watch their favorite team wherever they play. Fox doesn't care that the fans think that what they are doing is complete garbage, because to them, it's all about ratings and money. It doesn't matter if the product is affected and becomes a diminished version of what it could be. They are perfectly willing to make that trade-off. Case in point, them having Colorado kick off one of their most important games of the season at 10 a.m. local time, just to feed in to their big noon nonsense.